Hi friends, this is Amber from Sewing Traditions, and in today's video we're going to go over the things that we did to preserve a year's worth of strawberries for a family of 5. This includes things like strawberry shortcakes, preserving jam. We also froze some strawberries whole, and we preserved some of our smashed up strawberries in sugar and also froze those in bags. Now this won't cover all of our strawberry needs for the entire year. We will still buy some from the grocery store when we want fresh strawberries to eat, or when we run out of frozen strawberries for smoothies, we'll pick some of those up as well. It's just become a fun tradition that every year for the last, I believe, 8 years, we have gone and picked fresh strawberries from a local strawberry farm. This year, I believe it was $1.75 a pound, and we got a little over 25 pounds, so the amount of strawberries that we got ended up costing us about $48. If you have never gone and picked strawberries and tasted how delicious a freshly picked strawberry is, I would really encourage you, even if you're just going to pick a couple of pounds of strawberries, to go and do that, because the taste of those fresh, juicy strawberries are just wonderful. Now this is about, like I said, 25 pounds or so of strawberries, and every year we get a different amount. This year seemed to be a little bit less than normal, but it was about half an hour's worth of picking, and the kids just kind of got a little bit tired because of the heat that had started coming out. Now sometimes it's cold when we go, sometimes it's really, really hot when we go picking. But when we get home, what I do is I always wash the strawberries in a vinegar and water. And what this does is not only gets rid of all the bugs and all that, but also helps to get rid of the mold spores. And we really just want to reduce the amount of strawberries that we have to toss out. So I will rinse them only for a couple of minutes. You don't want to let them soak for too long because they'll start to soak up some of the water. And then don't forget to rinse off the vinegar water. Now on this day, when I'm washing them right when we got home, is not actually the day that we're going to be doing the preserving. So I really needed to make sure that our strawberries lasted another couple of days because I didn't have time to get to them on this specific day. However, we did have time to mash up some of the strawberries and make some strawberry shortcakes. And also what I do after I have rinsed those strawberries is I let them sit out and dry. Now I put them on a beach towel that I don't care that it gets stained, because it will get stained. Normally what I like to do is just get massive bulk quantities of the produce that we're going to be preserving and doing it all in one batch. That way I can get it done for the entire year. I'm not a fan of doing small batches because that just means that I have to get out all of my equipment multiple times, and I just prefer to do it once and be done. So I mentioned one of the things that we do first is to make some strawberry shortcakes. So what I do is I remove the tops, I add the strawberries to a bowl, and I sprinkle it with sugar, and then I take this mashed potato masher and use that to mash up my strawberries. Now this is, funny enough, just something that I've discovered in the last couple of years, and man, does it make it so much easier than sitting there and dicing up each strawberry individually. For our shortcakes, I just use a simple drop biscuit recipe. Now the longer that you let your strawberry and sugar mixture sit, the more juices that it will form, and then we just put that strawberry mixture on top of the biscuits, and of course we add some Cool Whip on top of it. Now you can make homemade whipped cream, but this day I just didn't have the time for that. Now I did this with probably about one of those boxes worth of strawberries. I took off the tops, mashed them, added sugar, let it sit, and then I added about 2 cups of that mixture to each of these bags and then froze them. Now I put them on a cookie sheet to freeze them initially because I didn't want them getting stuck to the wires inside my deep freezer. And with that I ended up with about 10 bags for the freezer, and we will just open these up later throughout the year to have either on ice cream or just to have in a bowl as a dessert throughout the year. And let me tell you that it still keeps a wonderful flavor throughout the whole entire year. And actually, I've even found some in the back of my freezer that was about 2 years old, so that flavor really does last. Now this is all the strawberries that I had left after mashing them up. So these were just sitting in my fridge for about another day or two until I could get to them. And the next thing that I'm going to be doing with these strawberries is removing the tops again. And then I actually decided to freeze, or I should say flash freeze, a couple trays worth of strawberries to be able to freeze them whole. So again, what I did was cut off the tops, and then I just put them on a parchment lined cookie sheet and put them in the freezer for a couple of hours. Now this is what you would call flash freezing, because you're freezing them in individual layers so that they do not stick together. Then after a couple of hours, when the strawberries are completely frozen, you can actually add them to a freezer bag and store them in your deep freezer. And this is probably going to be one of the easiest and quickest ways to preserve your strawberries. If you don't know what to do with them, just freeze them, because you can take them out of the freezer and you can preserve them in a jam later, or you can use them for strawberry shortcakes later, or you can use them for smoothies later. It's just a lot more versatile and less time consuming if that is something that you're concerned about, especially with coming home with a ton of strawberries and you just don't know what to do with them. Now I have this fun little tool, it's a couple dollars at the store, that it just scoops out the strawberry tops. And what I do is with those strawberry tops, because we have chickens and we have a little French bulldog that likes to eat the strawberry tops, I just save those because they make nice little snacks, and I'm either putting them in the fridge for the next couple of days to feed them as a snack to my little doggy or to the chickens, or I'll pop them in the freezer, because some days it gets really, really hot, and these next couple of weeks here in northern Indiana, we have a heat wave coming, and so the chickens are really going to need something to help cool them down. One other thing that you can do with the strawberry tops, I've heard, is to make a strawberry top vinegar. I recently saw a video about it, but if you wanted to look into it, or if you've done it before, let me know what you did and how that all went. I think you only need sugar and water and the strawberry tops. So as you can see, I ended up with about 2 cookie sheets worth of strawberries. These are actually the Sam's Club cookie sheets, and they are massive, and I really enjoy using them. They're worth it. I believe it was like a 2-pack for $11, I would say, or maybe it was $22. It's been a while, and I've had these for several years, and I ended up getting 2 of the 2-packs because I really enjoy them, and the size of them just makes it a lot easier for a lot of the things that I do. And I cannot recommend anymore for you to use parchment paper on your cookie sheets, really for any project that you're doing. Yeah, did you see that coming? I need to find a better way to do that, but oh well, at least it landed on the cookie sheet and it made it easier for me to clean things up and didn't really make a mess. But now I have a large bag of strawberries that I can figure out what to do with later. So next up, what I'm going to be doing is making some strawberry jam. I probably used about 1 of those boxes worth of strawberries to make this jam. Now, this is the first year that I'm going to be using the Pomona's pectin. I've heard a lot of good reviews about it, and I just prefer to use a pectin that doesn't require massive amounts of sugar, because many of the conventional pectins that you find at the store will require you to use almost the same amount of strawberries and sugar, and that is just a lot of sugar. Now we get our organic sugar from Costco, and as you can see, I'm just refilling my main jar. So I have like different storage systems, but I prefer to use the glass jars for in my main pantry where I'm grabbing things from more frequently. Now, if you're wanting to watch videos where everything is just clean and tidy, well, that's just not going to be the case because, well, we live here in this house and I'm constantly doing some sort of project, and so things are just not going to be clean all of the time. But what I'm doing here is I'm measuring out how many cups of those smashed strawberries that I have. Remember, I didn't add any sugar to this. This is just mashed up strawberries. All the juices are just from the strawberries. I didn't add anything else to it. And I think I ended up with about 10 cups, which for the Pomona's pectin recipe ended up being 2.5 recipes worth. So I just have to remember, which I do forget once, and have to go back and re-add in different ingredients to make sure that I get the right ratios. But every box of pectin that you get will come with some sort of recipe for you to follow. So just make sure you follow that so that your jam does set up properly. With the Pomona's pectin, they actually have you add the sugar and the pectin together in a bowl, and then you set it aside and wait until it's time to add the sugar. And the Pomona's pectin actually comes with a little container of calcium. So you're actually going to add this to, I believe it was half a cup of water, and you just mix it up, and that will actually, when you're done using it for this recipe, you can keep it in your fridge indefinitely, and then you just stir it up as you're ready to use it again if any of it has not completely dissolved. And again, like I said, this is the first time that I've used it, so it was a different experience. It was not hard at all. It's just, for me, I have to go over the directions several times to make sure that I'm not messing it up the very first time that I use it. So like I said, you just add that calcium powder to water, and that's going to go directly into the strawberry mixture to my left. And again, I'm just checking over the instructions again because, like I said, it's the first time I've used this, and it's a new experience, but it's not difficult. You just, like I said, have to remember to do the correct ratios because I had to go back and add in more because I was just reading the instructions off there and forgot to do the recipe. I think it was 2.5 of their original recipes, which I really should have just written down the amount that I needed because, like I said, I had to go back and add in more of that pectin. So there's that pectin powder. I'm just putting it in the sugar, mixing that up and setting aside for later. The calcium water, I will measure that out and put it directly into the strawberries and mix it up before I get my stove going. Typically what I have used though before finding the Pomona's pectin, which I had to order the Pomona's pectin, I ordered that from Azure Standard, and I think you can get it off of Amazon, but typically what I do is I've used Ball. They have a low to no sugar pectin that you can use, and it calls for a lot less sugar, and it still tastes wonderful. And there are recipes out there where you don't even need pectin, where you can use things, different fruits and stuff that are higher in pectin, and that you would add it in with your strawberries. I just prefer to do it this way because then I know that it's going to set up properly. So that was me adding in that extra amount of pectin that I forgot to add for extra, or double the recipe. So now that I have the calcium water in with my strawberries, I'm going to get that going. Now, one thing that I will really recommend is when you're making jam to use a very large pot. Now, the reason that I say to use a very large pot for this is because that strawberry mixture will rise nearly to the top of this pot that I have here. So basically, you're going to want to use one that is double the amount. So if that means that you have a lot to process, you may have to do smaller batches if you don't have a really large pot, which this one is not actually like a massive stock pot. Now, once the strawberries are boiling, you can add in your sugar and pectin mixture, and this is when it really starts to rise. Now, there is a foam on top of this, and if you want to, you can skim it off of there. There have been times where I have done that, but it's just a little bit more time consuming, and then I just end up tossing out that foam. I believe there were only a couple of years where I skimmed off the foam. But other than that, I normally just keep it on there. It really doesn't cause any issues. It just might look a little bit lighter on the top of your jam when you pull those out later on. Now, to my knowledge, I don't think that it affects the taste or anything like that. It's just one less step if you keep it on there. Now, you're going to notice throughout me stirring this that I continue to check the thickness of that jam. So as it's dripping off there, you'll notice right there that it starts to take longer for the strawberry mixture to drop down back into the pot there. Now this video is sped up about 1.5 times its original speed, but I just keep an eye on that just so that I know when it's about set up. As you'll notice, like I said before, that this stuff is really going to rise. Once it starts to come back to a boil after adding that sugar in it though, that's when you can turn off the heat. And when you turn off the heat, that's when the strawberry mixture will start to lower again. So if you're starting to panic and see that the strawberry mixture is just rising way too high for your comfort and you're worried that it's going to overflow, because it will overflow, just turn off the heat or turn down the heat until it gets back to where you're comfortable. And again, I just keep on checking that consistency of it to see how slow that it starts to drip. I think no matter how many times I've done this, I always get nervous that my jam is not going to set up and I'm just going to end up with jars of strawberry preserves that aren't like a jam, which that's fine too. It's still completely edible. It's still safe. You'll just end up with something that is not quite as thick as a jam, but you could use it on things like in your oatmeal, or you could use it on desserts. It's still, like I said, completely edible, completely fine. It'll taste the same. It's just that the consistency might not be the same. So now that I am done cooking this strawberry and pectin calcium mixture, then it's time to start putting it into jars. So I moved the pot out of the way so that you could see what I was doing, but what I'm doing is taking hot jars. Now that is one thing that I will say, is to make sure that whatever temperature of the food is that you're adding to jars, make sure the jars are about the same temperature, because you don't want to put a hot liquid into a cold glass jar because you could shatter them a lot easier. And then the same too when you go to add it into the water that you're canning your preserves in, is you'll want that to be hot water. So just equal temperature the whole way around. So as you can see, I added some of the strawberry preserves into my jar. Now I'm just using the 1/2 pint jars. I used that green stirring stick. I don't know what it's called, but just to make sure that I got all of the air bubbles out, which typically with a liquid like this, there aren't going to be that many air bubbles, but just to be safe, I put that in there, and then I wipe off the rims, and then I'm going to add my canning lid and then put on a ring over that. And I am using a metal ladle and a metal funnel. I can link those down in the description. I just got them off of Amazon. But like I said, remember to wipe off those rims, because you don't want to leave any jam on that rim, because then your lid might not seal. Now you can fill your jars higher than this, but that's just what I like to do. And after everything was done, this was how much I had left over that was not going to be going into the canner. I just put a lid on that and then put it into the fridge, and we ended up using it later in the week. I also ended up having one jar that I must not have gotten all of the jam off between the rim and the lid, because I had one that did not seal, so I also put that one in the fridge as well. Now I think you can actually reprocess it so that it seals, but just make sure you're getting like a new lid out and checking the rim of your jar just to make sure there's no cracks or anything like that causing it to not seal. Now let me start by saying I did not pressure can these. This is just water bath canning, but I'm using my pressure canner and taking off the weight off the top of it, and I'm not sealing it. But I'm using it as a water bath canner because it holds more, and I didn't want to have to do 2 batches because this is just going to process for 10 minutes. So after the water starts to boil is when you'll start your 10-minute timer, and then you take it off the heat and let it cool down. Now this is actually the next morning. I let those sit overnight with the rings on, and I'm just checking the seals on all of them. I had actually noticed the night before that one of them didn't seal, so I was able to get that into the fridge before morning. So make sure that when you are canning things, you take off the rings. Now you don't want to leave the rings on there when you're storing stuff, because those can reseal and you wouldn't even know. So if you have a lid failure while they're in storage and you don't have that ring on there, you're easily able to tell. However, if you would leave that ring on there and it reseals, it can reintroduce a lot of bacteria back into there, and then that could be something that causes everybody to get sick. It goes for anything that you're canning, so just be sure to take off the rings before storing them. So you'll notice that when I did some of this stuff, I was actually putting them on a cookie sheet while I was showing it to you. Well, at first it was actually just so that you guys could see what I was doing, but I realized later that, hey, I need to start using a cookie sheet to set all my stuff on while I'm filling up my jars, because usually I make a mess all over the counter. So that turned out really well, and I think I'll do that in the future. But if you see this little pad thingy that I've got my jars sitting on, it's just a drying mat from the Dollar Tree, and it's worked really well. That's basically everything that we did with our strawberries to preserve them for the year. Now we do have a small little strawberry bed, which I know it's got weeds in it right now, and I'm working on getting it cleaned out. But one of our friends actually gifted us about 12 strawberry plants, and so we are just getting those started. And I will tell you right now that it takes a lot of strawberries to get a decent harvest. Now with these 12 strawberry plants that we have planted right now, we only get a small handful of strawberries maybe every day or so that basically they hardly make it inside the house. But these are June bearing strawberries. And so what those do is they will actually put out these little, if you can see on the edge, they're called runners. And so those will form new strawberry plants. So by next year, hopefully we will have double the amount of strawberry plants that we have now. So they just continue to multiply over the years. And so that's why it's nice to have received some of these from some friends, because they actually had the same thing. They received them from friends, and now they have tons and tons of strawberries. So it's just really nice to get those little hand-me-down type of plants. Anyways, I just want you to keep that in mind as you're looking for strawberry plants, if you're looking to start your own little strawberry patch, because I know that I've paid before, I think like $3 per strawberry plant, and that's just crazy, especially because we only got, like I said, 1 or 2 strawberries every couple of days per plant, and that was just expensive, and then they ended up dying, and I just didn't know how to take care of them. It's just kind of good to know how strawberry plants work. So if you are getting a June bearing, which is like the kind that we have and the kind that we picked from the strawberry field, those ones all come in one big batch. So they all produce around the same time. And usually when we go to pick strawberries, it's a 2-week long season, basically, that we can go and do the U-pick strawberry picking. Now, if you were to get an ever-bearing strawberry plant, then those ones produce throughout the entire season, and you'll get smaller amounts. You won't just get like a massive batch of them all at one time. So it just depends on what your preserving style is. If you're like me and you prefer to do all of your preserving all at one time, then a June bearing strawberry plant would be a good idea. If you would prefer to have just some small snacking throughout the entire season, then an ever-bearing strawberry plant would be probably best fit for you. Or if you just know that you're going to go and do your strawberry picking once a year, then you could still get the ever-bearing and have some to snack on at home. My plan is to go over this kind of thing in future videos, different varieties of produce that you can grow in your garden that are either indeterminate or determinate, which just kind of is the way that something grows, on whether you're going to have small amounts of a harvest throughout the season, or if it's all going to produce at once, and then where you have a massive amount to preserve all at one time. Thank you so much for watching. I'm sure many of us are alike, and that we may be a few generations removed from all of this being taught. All these skills being taught that used to be passed down by generation out of necessity. Again, thank you for being here. This is Amber from Sewing Traditions, and I'd like to encourage you to start where you are. Start slow and learn something old. It's okay to be the first generation to replant our roots. And I'd like to say, may God bless you in this journey of sewing new traditions. Be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you. Bye, friends.